Hey, everybody, and happy Saturday morning to you. I am Darren Clark. This is the Darren Clark Real Estate Show. I hope you're curled up on the couch. You've got a nice hot cup of coffee. Maybe you've been reading the news on your phone and this alert popped up, but I'm glad you joined us. What is this show? We're going to do this weekly, and this is your one-stop shop for real estate information. We're going to talk about just things that affect the real estate market, lending and inspections and title, and we may even touch on wills and probate, what to do to stage your home, how to tour a home, the buying process, all sorts of things like that. So stick around. Find out what we got today. I'll tell you what we got today. We've got a great guest. Rachael Carter from Synergy One Lending is going to join us, and she's got information about changes in the lending industry for 2021. We have a new presidential administration. It's a new year. So consequently, we get changes. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about first-time home buyer programs. We'll talk about just all sorts of things lending. Rachael and I went over this just a couple of days ago, and what I thought was going to be a 10-minute conversation, we talked for 30 minutes and I wasn't bored, and I don't think you will be either, so I'm really looking forward to that. So what we're doing is we're putting this on Facebook. It's a Facebook live broadcast, and if you're joining us on Facebook, I definitely appreciate your time this morning. You'll notice you can leave a comment. We would love to interact with you, engage with you. If you do have questions, leave a comment in that box. Once this recording is done and it's put out on Facebook Live, I'm going to take this recording and put it on YouTube for the YouTube audience there. So if you are watching that recording on YouTube, I ask that you kindly like and subscribe to my channel. Let's grow that audience, and maybe we'll start doing this live on YouTube at the same time. Also, I'm taking the audio from this and creating a podcast. So this is kind of a very eclectic use for what we're doing today, and I'm really looking forward to what this is going to turn into as we do this on a weekly basis. If you haven't already liked my page on Facebook, please feel free to do that. I don't only do this show, I also post information throughout the week about homes that are on the market, things that are happening within the market, real estate information. That way, if you are in the market to buy or sell real estate, you can find my page as a resource for you. And of course, I'd like to be a resource for you. If I can help you in any way, please feel free to get in touch with me, and let's go over your specific situation, and we'll go from there. Last week, I did a quick live broadcast where we talked about the knock lending program, and that's a program that allows you to buy a new home before you sell your existing home, and that's, like I said, it's just one of the many programs that are out there. But today we're going to talk with a lender who has more programs than that at her disposal. She has years of experience, so I want to go ahead and bring her on. This is Rachael Carter with Synergy One Lending. Hello, Rachael.
Hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Saturday. I'm super excited to be here and to share some of the mortgage good word with you.
I
So
tell you
thank
what,
you for having me on.
absolutely. But before we get started, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started in mortgage,
Uh-oh, I think I
and
froze.
I think you're back. So go ahead and tell me about yourself, how you got started, and where you're at now.
So I started in the industry, oh gosh, maybe 6 years ago now. Time does fly when you work in real estate. And I spent probably about a decade working in sales. I went to school to be an engineer. And as you know, sometimes the things that you go to school for, you just don't end up kind of pursuing that passion because you find out through going to school that, you know, you really love certain aspects of that major, but you prefer other sides of it. And that's sort of what happened. I fell into kind of loving the idea of explaining really difficult things in an easy way just to a general audience. And so through that kind of strange path, I had a gentleman that introduced me to mortgages. And I remember I walked in that first day that he hired me and I said, you know, I don't know anything about any of this. And he goes, that's okay. That's how you learn. And I've never forgot that feeling. So whenever I'm talking to a first time buyer or maybe someone who hasn't purchased a home in a really long time, the process changes all the time. So it's really interesting to kind of get to re-explain that process to people who've really never gone through it before, because I remember what it was like to not know anything. So through that, I've kind of been with a few different companies, and I've with builders, I've worked with investors, I've worked with a lot of first-time buyers. So it allows me to kind of pull from a lot of different areas to build a really nice kind of portfolio to assist people with, which is always fun.
Oh, outstanding. Now you're with Synergy One Lending, and you are helping home buyers through there. They are a great company from everything that I can see. One of the things that Rachel told me when we first started talking about lending is they have a program contract to close in 14 days, which that just blew my mind. That's a very quick turnaround. So let's go ahead and get started. And one of the things we wanted to talk about were changes for 2021. And I know one of those things is the maximum loan amount through both FHA conventional loans. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So the first thing I like to explain to your audience is that we were discussing it the other day and you thought it was kind of funny, is the way that I describe loans is sort of like shoes. So you have Reebok and you have Nike, and they're both shoe companies, and they both produce shoes and tennis shoes, and you can wear them for basketball or running, but they obviously are different brands and they fit in a different way. So they have their own rules, they have their own companies. So that's the way that a lot of people need to start looking at a conventional loan and an FHA loan. So they're technically two different entities. They're two completely different set of rules. They're two completely different guideline sets. The way that you do your appraisals are different. But at the same time, they're both loans. And there is no bad loan and there is no good loan. They're both great options. It's just about finding the shoe that fits best. Now, with that being said, we are talking about the changes in the maximum loan amount. They are also done in two different ways because they're different types of loans. So conventional loans, when they come out with their maximum loan amount, they are going countrywide. So that number actually went up to $548,250. And that is a nationwide limit that it came out with. And so basically, that's not the maximum house you can buy with a conventional loan. That is a maximum loan amount that you can take out. Once you're over that threshold, then you reach into something that's called the jumbo market, which is kind of a specialty market for high value loans. It kind of makes its own rules, and sometimes they're a little bit more stringent with their paperwork. So if you're wanting to stay within conventional limits, you can still buy a $700,000 house as long as you're putting enough money down to bring you into that 548,250 number. And that's kind of where that conventional number actually jumped up quite a bit from last year. And it has raised every year pretty consistently. So it's always nice when you can do a refinance or you can help someone purchase with a better interest rate while doing a conventional loan still. Because if you tried to do a loan of that size 6 months ago, you would have had to go onto the jumbo market and probably have a slightly higher rate. Now, to shift gears to our FHA, FHA went up as well, but it goes up by county. So the number that I'm going to give you is for Dallas and Tarrant County. However, Grayson County in Texas, several other smaller counties that are out in West Texas or East Texas that have a lower income median will probably have a lower maximum limit. So Dallas and Tarrant County went up to $411,700, so $411,700. And again, the same rule applies there. That's not the maximum house, that's the maximum loan limit. And FHA minimum down is still 3.5%. So that's just something to take into account there, as well as going back to conventional, the minimum down that you can have there is 3%. So there are a lot of programs that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have 20% down and that these are the maximum house that you can get. So hopefully that helps explain a little bit difference between the two and the maximum amounts.
Sure. And one thing, we kind of breach that subject right away is when it comes to buying a home, a lot of people want to know, how much cash do I need to have? And I told you this story the other day. I'll tell it again. 20 years ago, my wife and I were buying our very first home. In fact, we were we hadn't even celebrated our first wedding anniversary yet. And we're in the builder's office, and they're like, oh yeah, you just pay $500 to us to get started. That was our earnest money. And then here's a card, go talk to a lender. So we went and talked to that lender, and she's like, how much cash are we putting down? We was like, well, we just wrote a $500 check. And they're like, oh yeah, but you have to have a down payment. And we're like, oh, well, we can't do that. She goes, I can. And she came up with a grant program that allowed us to finance a down payment, closing costs, whole bunch of stuff. The only other cash we put into that entire thing was about $245 at the closing table. So that was 20 years ago. A lot has happened in the real estate market in 20 years. We've had a subprime mortgage crisis. We've had all sorts of things happen in 20 years. 9/11 has happened since then. So tell me about what programs are available for that first-time home buyer. Not a lot of cash available, but they've got good credit and they're motivated and they want to become homeowners.
So a lot has changed in the past 20 years. So I'm glad that you said that. Now, the one thing that I do want to note is what you just said. This is for buyers that have good credit. There are 3 main programs in the state of Texas that are available that can give you anywhere from no down payment assistance gift and just a different interest rate, where you can get a mortgage credit certificate, which is a discount or basically kind of money back on your taxes every year for buying a home as a first-time buyer, to getting up to 6 or 7% of your down payment, closing costs, and everything covered. Now, those programs have special guidelines that really do feed off of that good credit. What they're really designed for and the type of buyer that they're designed for is you have a borrower with good work history. They have a steady, solid job. They've had that job for, on a regular basis for maybe 2 years, or they've been in the same industry for 2 years. They have really solid credit. National average for credit is about 660 right now. A lot of those down payment assistance programs will go down to 620 or 640. However, if your credit is below 600, we're going to have to work on that credit before we get you qualified for first-time buyer program. But you also have to have your debt in check. So you can't have a massive amount of debt to your name on top of maybe a non-solid work history. But once we have those things in order and we can actually double check all of them, there are those grant programs that are available. And a lot of the times you have to take a first-time buyer class. You actually have to sit through and kind of learn about being a home buyer from an actual course online. And then once you've taken that course, we actually apply it through our process of doing your mortgage. You have to provide usually 2 or 3 years of your tax returns. You do have to have them filed. And we'll actually go through all those processes to make sure that you do qualify for that program so that you can get that money to actually use on your home. And I'm glad that you mentioned that some people talk about their earnest money, because that is anytime that you see advertising online, and a lot of realtors will do this, and I'm always like, no. They'll talk about how their client got $1,000 back at closing. Most of the time, if not all of the time, that money that they're getting back at closing is their own money. It's their earnest money that they actually put down at the beginning of the process, which is normally about 1% of the sales price. So if you're buying a $200,000 home, you're going to probably put $2,000 in earnest money down. And then if the grant program goes through and everything works out and you don't need all $2,000 of that earnest money, then maybe you'll get a check back from the title company for the excess that you put down, which in this case would have been, oh, you put $1,000 extra down. But the money that you're getting back is not from the lender and is not from the title company. It's your own funds. But it is important that you do have some money in the bank, because we have to show that you do have credit worthiness. You do have reserves. So I'm glad that you brought up earnest money, because it is something that kind of glaze over a little bit when they talk about it. We're all going to buyer that has nothing in their bank account, and they're like, I want to buy a house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, we got to work on some budgeting first.
Right. Well, and some people might be watching and they're asking themselves now, well, what is earnest money? And from a real estate standpoint, it's real simple. When you go to buy a house, you're entering into a contract to buy that house. That earnest money is like prepaid damages if for some reason you back out of that contract before it comes to fulfillment. So if you get into buying the house and you write a check, we're using a $200,000 house, you write that $2,000 earnest money check. By the way, earnest money, the amount is negotiable. Just I'll throw that out there. But you write that $2,000 earnest money check. If you back out of that contract and you don't have a clause in the contract that allows you to do that, you're going to lose that earnest money, and it's going to be paid as damages for breach of the contract. However, if you go all the way through the process and you close on the home, that earnest money is applied to the sales price of the home. So it's not like you lose that money. It's think of it kind of like a deposit, just in case something happens. And we're seeing that sometimes, that you get into the house and there's another period, and we'll talk about all this in another episode, but there's a period of that contract called the option period that allows you to back out of that contract for any reason and you still get your earnest money back. But you get through that option period and then something in life happens. And with the pandemic right now, it could be something as simple as somebody within the family contracts COVID, a COVID-related job loss. Now, while we do have contract addendums to help protect us there, but there are situations that could cause you not to go through with the purchase of that house. And if you back out, you lose that earnest money. So that's what earnest money is. If you're brand new to the real estate process, we're throwing out some terms, and I think those of us who work in the business take those terms for granted because we use them every day. But if you're brand new to it, that's what that means. If you do have questions like what is earnest money, feel free to drop a comment. Let us know if something's confusing you, because we are more than happy to explain it. We want you to feel comfortable if you're making such a huge investment as buying a home. So, Rachel, back to the programs. I mentioned the program where I only had to spend about $250 at the closing table, and that program gave me about $7,000, and it was a grant program, and I didn't have to pay it back as long as I stayed in the house for 7 years. Are those programs still around?
Yes. So I don't want to get into specifics here because it can get really, really hairy going through all guidelines. But if anyone has questions, or feel free to reach out to me. But there are programs where we're going to check your income. And if your income increases a exponential amount in 5, 6, 7 years, something like that, there can be that you have to pay some of that money back. There can be taxes that are added to those sorts of things. But again, that kind of gets into the hair of a lot of it. Most of the time, these programs are designed to get people to purchase homes that may not be able to purchase them to begin with. And they want you to buy the home and stay in the home. These are not designed for people who want to move in and fix and flip a house. This is not for people who want to move into a home and turn it into an investment property in 3 months. So these programs do have safeguards in them to prevent people from kind of working the system in a way. They want these to go to, man, my daughter wants to go to a specific school district and I just am tired of renting and I really want to find that house that I'm going to live in while she finishes out high school. That sort of buyer that's going to live in that home for a few years. Really, there aren't any prepayment penalties on loans these days like there used to be. So a lot of the times, buyers will not even have any sort of knowledge if they've lived in the house 4 or 5 years, if there's any penalty for them moving out. If there is a penalty, it's usually not looked at as a penalty. It's maybe owing a small portion of that money back. And a lot of time that's coming out of the equity that you've built into your home. And at the rate that houses are gaining equity currently in the market, usually you're not even going to feel that. But a good rule of thumb is to look at it as, I'm buying this house to live in this home, not I'm going to buy this house so that in a year I can turn it into investment property, or to flip it and sell it in 6 months, because that's not what these programs are for. And you'll sign a lot of documents at close stating the fact that you intend on living and being an owner occupied in this house.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the other things that the pandemic has brought about is what would we call it the other day? The side hustle. We've got people that are out there that they have their steady job that they're getting their W-2 from, and they're getting their biweekly or weekly or monthly paycheck. but that's not making ends meet because the spouse lost a job or something along those lines. So they start doing things like driving for Uber or working for DoorDash, or maybe they've taken on some odd jobs and started their own business. Maybe they're mowing lawns. It could be anything. But whatever it is, they've got that secondary income that they are responsible for. They're an independent contractor. They're self-employed. How long does a person have to be able to show that income to be able to use it in qualifying for a home loan?
So that's a great question. And I kind of want to recap. The guidelines are different for the different types of loans, but a great rule of thumb is 2 years. And it's 2 years of consistent income. And that's important because even if it's a new side hustle, or an example that I've used before is we've seen where maybe the wife will work at the church on the weekends or help do, we actually just closed an accountant that works for her church on the weekends, and her church pays her for that. But obviously it's a part-time job. And she has done that job for 5 years on top of her regular accountant job. And she puts it on her taxes as a 1099. She makes sure she pays all of her taxes on it. And we absolutely can use that second income. The same thing goes for Uber or Lyft. We have people that get 1099s as rideshare. And as long as you put it on your taxes for 2 years, we can use that income. Of course, obviously, if it's qualifying income, if you write all of it off, we do have to take that into account. And hopefully you're not having a massive loss, because that would cause its own problems. But 2 years is really our rule of thumb there. Now, if you just started in the past year doing a side hustle, I teach swim lessons over the summer, so I know all about this. It's a cash-based business. Most people pay me through Venmo. But I do make a very nice amount of money in the summertime doing that. And I do put it in its own little account, and I do pay taxes on it. I put it on my, tax returns, but I didn't do it in 2019 because I was so busy doing real estate. So for me, if I wanted to use it as qualifying income, I couldn't, because I don't have a 2-year history of it. However, if I wanted to use that money to actually put it towards my down payment or my cash to close, I absolutely can do that. We have to go through some channels to make sure that the funds were not obtained through illegal means. That's a kind of requirement to prevent money laundering through the Patriot Act that we all have to follow. And that's not just me, that's all of us. We have to make sure that you didn't go out and, do anything that's bad to get that money. But most of the time, if you're getting it deposited or it's a direct deposit, or you can provide proof of receipt, say you are selling cars or something like that, we can actually get a paper trail for those things so that you can use that money towards your down payment or your closing costs. So you may not be able to use it towards your income to offset your debt, but you would be able to use it towards your down payment if we could vet all of those funds. So it's not a total bummer for me to tell you that you can't use that income. You do get to use that money because it is yours and you did obtain it. So, yeah.
And most people work hard for it. So enjoy it and do it that way. I want to go ahead and bring up again that you can leave a comment. If you have a question, even if you're not on the live broadcast of this, leave a comment, ask that question. If that question is of Rachel, I will definitely forward that question to her, get a response for you. We want to help you. Both of us are in this business to help people get into a new home or to sell their existing home. We want to help, and we look forward to doing that. So if you want to contact Rachael, I've got her contact information here. She is with Synergy One Lending. You can reach her at 817-877-7808 or email at rcarter@s1l.com. She has an app. And I tell you what, I can do this. I promise. This is technology. Rachel, bear with me for a second. In fact, I'm going to throw you right back up here on the screen. I've got your link to your app, and this app is amazing. You can do just about everything on it, and I'm going to throw it over in the chat right now. Let's see if that works and get that in there. I hope that posted because it just disappeared on my screen. But There it is. If you want to download Rachel's app, you can click on that link that's in the comments right now. You sign up with her. You can apply for a loan. You can track your progress. She can communicate with you through that. It is a great app to help you get started on your home buying process. And of course, when you're ready to find that house, give me a call. Let's walk through some. Let's find out what you want. I absolutely love showing houses. You know, that's weird, right? I'm a realtor, and my favorite part of this job is showing houses. I like walking into new homes and showing off the new features and seeing architectural stuff. Maybe I'm a nerd. I don't care. It's just a lot of fun. So I
Oh,
want to
I
help
don't
you
think
buy
so at
that home.
all. No, no.
All
I
right.
think that's when I go on vacation, I love looking at all that stuff. And I'm like, you're not really experiencing a place that you're visiting if you don't really get to see the architecture and kind of all the joy that comes along with how everything is different. So I can see that absolutely when you have a couple that come to you and they have some specific needs in regards to what they want in a home, and then you find that thing that may be a little bit different. You know, maybe they might want their, you're seeing a lot of multi-generational right now, and they want that additional master, and you
Yeah.
find that house that has it because they're not super common. So that's always really awesome when you can find that for them.
I had a client a few months ago that we had looked at 11 or 12 houses, and by this time I knew what she wanted. I had a feel for
Mm-hmm.
what she was looking for. So I got on the MLS and started doing some searches, and I found a house that had everything that was on her list except for a gas range. It had an electric range in it. But I took her to that house as a surprise, and she walked in. She goes, "This is my house. This is the house I want." Ironically, she ended up not buying that house. She bought a different house, but even at the end of her option period, she was calling me, "Is that house still available? Is that house still available?" So
That's funny how that works.
I absolutely love showing houses, and we've got to do that at some point. Once again, if you have a question for Rachel, feel free to throw it in the chat. We're going to move on to the next segment. Rachel, you are welcome to stick around and comment on this. If you have to go, I completely understand you're a busy person, but we're going to talk about 5 myths of moving to Texas. You know, we have a lot of people that are not from Texas that are moving to this beautiful state, this wonderful state. And I know, Rachel, you're not from Texas. You were born elsewhere and came here. I have lived elsewhere and made it a point to get back as quick as I could. I was born in Fort Worth and spent 6 years in Southern California, and now I'm back. I think I got paroled from California. So, in any case, we're going to talk about 5 myths of moving to Texas. Let's see. Where am I at? Get me back here. All right, here we go. All right, 5 myths. Number one, cowboy hats and boots. You know, we do more than just cowboy hats and boots here. A lot of people think if you move to Texas, you have to wear a cowboy hat, you have to wear boots. And that's not the case. We get to do a lot of different things together. Or we get to. Sorry, I just read a comment. Thanks, Steve, for the comment. Steve Markwart just let this go. I'll put it up. This is awesome. Steve and I worked together. He owned Parker County Today magazine for a while, and I had the privilege of working with him and hosted a radio show with Steve talking about Parker County. So Steve jumped on the broadcast here and left that comment. And Steve, it's good to touch base with you. I haven't talked to you in forever, but hey, thanks so much for the comment. All right, back to cowboy hats and boots. You can wear other things. Texas is very eclectic. A lot of people think that what they see on TV is what Texas is, and that is not the case at all. As you can see, I'm wearing my golf attire today, and you know, you're going to find, yes, there are people that wear cowboy hats and boots, but I don't even own a cowboy hat, and I don't even own boots. Rachel, you strike me as a person who owns those things but doesn't wear them every day.
So I actually don't own a cowboy hat or a Stetson or anything like that. I know, shocking, shocking. But I did actually get my first pair of boots when I was a little girl. So you're right, I was born in Detroit, and I moved here when there was a big mass exodus from Detroit in the 90s, and my family was part of that for the GM plant in Arlington. And that's when I moved to Texas. And so I was raised in Texas. And there are many pictures of me as a little girl wearing my white Dallas Cowboy cheerleader cowboy boots that my mom had bought me. Because if you don't know who the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders are, you are missing out on everything. They are America's sweethearts. And I was convinced that I was going to be one, and I would not take those puppies off. But as an adult, or even as a teenager, I never owned a pair. That's again a part of Texas that I think a lot of my cousins and friends in other states assumed that I had this whole like plethora of country. I don't even like country music, but I did get a pair gifted to me last year. I got a pair of boots. So, and I do wear them on occasion, but yeah. So now if I ever have like a wedding that I have to go to that in Texas, if it's like, cocktail attire, or, you feel like you can get away with wearing boots, you can put a nice dress with it and you can get away with it. Men can wear a tuxedo with boots and it still count as formal. So I agree. We are not all out here clicking our heels and wearing Stetsons, but yeah, you can definitely get away with it here. If you really wanted to wear your boots every day, you could definitely do it. Even weddings, church.
And number 2 on the list, barbecue and tacos. I had somebody tell me there's nothing to eat but barbecue and tacos. And not that there's anything wrong with barbecue and tacos.
I was about to say.
So
I had barbecue last night. We had tacos this weekend. It was pretty good.
So, but in any case, there are plenty of things to eat here in Texas. You can find just about any cuisine that you're looking for, from Indian cuisine to Thai. Of course, you can find Mexican food in Texas. In fact, Texas has some of the best Mexican food out there. But you can find Italian, you can find German. I live in the small town of Granbury, Texas, which is a beautiful town. But right on our town square is a restaurant that specializes in German food. They also specialize in German beer, which makes it very popular for the locals. But there are a lot of cuisine options in Texas other than barbecue and tacos. All right, number 3, let's move on. Horses and pickups. Now, I lived in California for 6 years. I think I mentioned that. And it was not, I moved out there in 4th grade. I moved back my sophomore year in high school. And it was not uncommon for kids that I went to school with to ask me if I rode my horse to school. Now, full disclosure, 40 of my 46 years of life have been spent in Texas, and I have never ridden a horse. So you don't have to learn how to ride a horse. I know, Rachel's shocked. How can you live in Texas and not ride a horse? It's just what it was.
That's shocking to me. I've ridden a horse many times. Yeah.
But it's not a requirement. You don't have to own a horse in Texas, and nor do you have to own a pickup. Now, there are a lot of horses and a lot of pickups in Texas, but it's not a requirement. I wish sometimes people could see downtown Dallas, right? Because you don't often see horses in downtown Dallas. Now you can. Dallas PD has a mounted patrol.
At least have them. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. And Fort Worth has the stock show.
Worth, yeah.
If you go to Northside, you go up to the stockyards, you'll actually see a cattle drive, but I think that's more touristy than anything else. But yeah, you don't have to have a horse, and you don't have to have a pickup. I don't have a pickup. Do you have a pickup, Rachel?
So I did. My first car was a pickup truck that I paid for in cash with my lifeguard money. But I will add to that I have lived in a lot of other places, and I have friends from other places as well, that when they come and visit Dallas, it's especially my friends from Europe, and this is me kind of prefacing it. So my friends from, like, say, London that will come and visit, and they do expect the whole tour. Like, we can do very touristy Texas things, and we'll do that. But I love it when we're driving on the highway, and you're just like everyone drives a truck here. There's so many of them. Like, why are there so many trucks? Like, wow, all of your cars are so big. So as much as I say you don't have to have a truck when you move here, because I don't. I drive a little Kia now. But I will say that it is, if you're not used to seeing a lot of Ford F-150s, big, huge trucks driving around. I mean, there are some pickup trucks out there that are more expensive than very nice sports cars.
Yeah.
So don't knock the pickup truck, because people can spend $100,000 on those puppies sometimes. They're very, very
Absolutely.
nice. So, yeah.
And they can probably tow every car in your garage at the same time too. So there are
Oh,
some.
and the thing is, people don't ever use, like, I mean, very rarely do you see them ever doing like pickup truck work. I think a lot of, in Dallas, for the ones in Dallas where I live, it's a lot of like, I own a pickup truck and I can use it if I needed to, but I don't ever use it. I just wanted one.
The biggest thing they do is
It's
pick up a sheet of
so
plywood from
silly.
Lowe's. All right,
Oh
let's
yeah.
move on. Let's move on. Number four is dusty ranches. That if you move to Texas, the only place to live is a dusty ranch. Rachel, do you live on a dusty ranch?
No, I live in a condo in Uptown in Dallas. I almost bought a dusty ranch. There are dusty ranches available. You can buy lots of land, and they're beautiful. There's a lot of acreage still available in Texas that is right outside the city. But I ended up buying a cute little condo. There's a lot of really beautiful townhouses and new developments. And I mean, and the thing I think that shocks people is not only do we not have like just dusty ranches or ranch houses, I think isn't like the build of the design of a ranch house. There's a lot of really cool architecture in Dallas and in the cities around Dallas. I mean, especially in the older neighborhoods of Dallas, if it hasn't been demolished yet, there's a whole movement of like getting rid of all the mid-century modern houses or the Tudors. But you can find some really incredible real estate and homes in Dallas and in the surrounding areas that are really beautiful homes.
Sure.
So yeah, that's a terrible stereotype. We've got some beautiful architecture here in the city.
And that's right. Even over in Fort Worth, you get into, some of those neighborhoods over there. Take Westover Hills, for example, and there are some palatial estates that are over there. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, you've got, small family homes, for your middle class families and down. We've got just about anything that you're looking for in Texas. And the problem is those stereotypes. Not everything is a farmhouse. Not everything is a shed. We have, if you can find it in California, you can pretty much find it in Texas. We have the same types of houses. If you want beachfront property, we have that in Texas. You can go down along the Gulf Coast and find that. So everything that they have out there, you can have here. The one thing we don't have as much of is the change in elevation. California has mountain homes and houses built into the side of cliffs. Of course, sometimes the rains come and they slide down those cliffs, but nonetheless, Texas is rather flat, but we do have some places in Texas that are more mountainous, especially if you get out into West Texas. And that gets us to our number five thing on the list, which was flat desert and prairie. And this is once again the movie industry, Hollywood, likes to paint Texas as being flat desert, prairie land. But like where I live in Hood County, in Granbury, Texas, we have a beautiful lake with hundreds, if not thousands, of lakefront properties. We have the piney woods of East Texas. We have the Gulf Coast. We have the hill country. We've got just about every type of ecology you can think of, except for maybe the frozen tundra of Alaska. Just about everything else that you'll find in the United States, we have here in Texas. If you like flat desert prairie, we have plenty of that, but that's not the case here. We have a lot more. I like to tell this
I
story.
do.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I say I love to hike, so you'll find me on vacation in Colorado and in Lake Tahoe to hike. But that's only because I've hiked a lot of the places that are here in Texas. I mean, you've got the hill country down in Austin that's really beautiful and lots of hills and the wildflowers. But even in the Metroplex, south of the Metroplex in Cedar Hill, we have a gorgeous state park that has a ton of beautiful hiking trails that I don't think a lot of people in Dallas take full advantage of. I mean, it's really beautiful, but also people don't realize how big Texas is. I think they see it on a map and they realize, I mean, if you went to elementary school or high school, junior high here in Texas, you take Texas history and they give you the little snippet that from tip to tail, you can drive for 24 hours straight and still be in the state of Texas because it's that big. And it's not to boast about it, but it's to kind of remind people that when I first moved to New York and Maine and all those areas that I lived in, when I was in my early 20s, you found out very quickly that you could drive for an hour and be in a completely different state. And I thought that was shocking because you definitely can't do that here. So you're not kidding. There's a lot of different ecosystems. If you like forest, you can move to East Texas. But if you do like that mountain, canyony look, you can always move to the Panhandle where there's Paladuro Canyon that looks like a little mini Grand Canyon, or out by Big Bend that's breathtaking out there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, talk about the best hiking that you can find. Big Bend is fantastically beautiful. So I think that people they do fall into those stereotypes that I think everything is like Lubbock. Not to knock Lubbock, but Lubbock.
Well, for a lot of people, the only exposure that they have to Texas is either the film industry, or they were driving and they went from Albuquerque to Oklahoma City on I-40, which takes you right through Amarillo,
and just right across the top.
And that's the Panhandle, and it is flat, and it is a lot of farmland up there. But every state's like that. If you were an alien and you crash landed around the Salton Sea of Southern California, you would think California was the worst place in the world, or in the middle of Death Valley. Now the desert has its own beauty, but that's not all that's there, and it's kind of the same with Texas. Also, you were talking about how large Texas is. A lot of people don't realize that the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which that's what they call it, is the Metroplex. But the metropolitan area that is the Dallas-Fort Worth area consists of about 11 to 13 counties, depending on who's writing the rules. But it fits completely, or barely, inside the state of Connecticut. So the state of Connecticut is the same size as just the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is the second largest area in Texas. The Houston metropolitan area is actually larger than we are. And so you can fit all of DFW inside New Jersey. So it is one of those things that it's massive. Texas is huge. I can drive for 8 to 12 hours and never leave the state, and I'm not driving in a circle. So, you can find just about everything you want here in Texas. And the best part, no state income tax. We don't have a state income tax here. So now you pay a little bit more in property taxes, but as far as income tax, we don't have that here in Texas. All right, our time is drawing close to a close.
I'm glad you brought that up, though.
Oh, yeah. People need. You know what, Rachel? I'm going to have to bring you back because there is so much information that we can talk about from the lending arena that we just can't fit in this show, and we're trying to keep it to a time frame that allows you to soak it in without getting tired of us, which I'm sure could happen pretty quickly. But Rachel, I'd love to bring you back. We can talk more about lending sometime in the future. If you want to contact Rachel, I'll put her information up again. Once again, she is Rachael Carter with Synergy One Lending. You can reach her at that phone number, that email. You can leave a comment on this post, and I will forward that information to her so that she can reach out to you. If you haven't already, like my Facebook page. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe on that channel. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today, and I really appreciate you spending your morning with us.
It was my pleasure. I had a great time.
All right, and thank you for joining us. And
Absolutely.
I hope that
I hope everyone has a wonderful Saturday.
Oh yeah, have a great Saturday. This is the Darren Clark Real Estate Show. That's going to be all for this Saturday. Make sure you tune in next Saturday at 9 o'clock, and I will see you then. Until next time, have a great day, and we will see you in a week.